everyone, I'm Brian Easterday, and welcome to Eyeofthestormastrology. So today I'm going to be talking about Mercury and how Mercury is associated with the Trimurti, which are the three main, you could say the three main divinities within Vedic school of thought or Hinduism. But before I do that, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. That way you get notified whenever all my new videos come out, and that definitely helps me get this information out there to people. So first off, you have to understand on the Grahas, the planets, they'll have avatars of Vishnu associated with him, and the avatar of Vishnu for Mercury is known as Budha, or like it's the divine intellect when you really look at it. Then you can also see that there are deities or archetypes that are kind of ruling planets. The one that is associated with Mercury is Vishnu himself. And Vishnu, for those of you who don't know, if you kind of need a basic introduction into the Vedic school of thought, we look at everything as what a lot of people will call source. Many times I've referred to as source. We'll call Vishnu. It's the experiencer. So from Vishnu, everything else is born. So to then actually create things, you need to have different forces that can work with each other. So to do this, Vishnu creates Brahma, and from Brahma comes Rudra or Shiva. So Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva are kind of the three, what you could call the three main deities in the Vedic philosophy. These are known as the Trimurti. So when I say that, that's what you know I'm referring to. Brahma is associated with the creative force. Shiva is associated with the destructive force. And Vishnu is the preserver. So we can look at a few of these things. So first off, let's look at to understand how this plays out. Let's look at what Mercury is actually associated with in astrology as far as its qualities and traits and things like that. So Mercury, the two biggest things that you'll see it associated with, and the ones I want to focus on here, are like our intellect, our ability to think, and our communication, ability to speak. Because it's being able to understand and then transmit that knowledge. Through that, we can become like Vishnu. We can become, a creator. So first off, let's look at how both our intellect and our words can create, preserve, and destroy. So let's take a look at each of these. So first off, how can the intellect and our communication create? Well, first off, if we want to step back and look at the macrocosm, we can see that there's cosmic law and an understanding right here of Mercury that not only is Source wanting to experience itself, is Vishnu wanting to experience himself. That comes from what? A questioning, a wanting to know. The universe is also, everything is vibration. So we see both the law of mentalism and the law of vibration here at work. When we look and analyze everything, we can see everything in the universe is moving. Everything is vibrating. Even things that are still, like my desk here, it appears to be still, but really on a subatomic level, it's actually moving. So everything's vibration. Even in like Abrahamic traditions, even within Christianity, there's the beginning that said God spoke, and so there's this underlying theme here that you can see that the creation is intricately involved with our sound, our speech specifically. Even so, to have proper speech, you also have to have the strong intellect and understanding. So we can see here that not only is this going on in the macrocosm, the understanding and the sound, those are the mind and this ability to express that mind. Those are what are creating everything. But our own intellect does that. Our own brain does that. Like, so our thoughts, we can come up with new thoughts. We can have creative thoughts, right? And then if we need to actually bring that into a manifestation, we actually have to kind of bring our critical thinking into it. Like if you want to build a house, you have to think about the materials you need and what tools you'll need and the measurements and all of that, looking at all the different pieces and assembling them together. It's all Mercury. It's all the intellect. Now the feminine does have a role in there in like creativity and making things beautiful and stuff like that, but the actually getting things done, the actual creating of it, that's an intellectual thing. You have to know, if I need to build this wall this big, I need to make this cut at this certain point. That's Mercury. Then you can also look at it as our sound, our speech. That has the ability to create as well, because what can you create? You can create opportunities, you can create new friendships, you create a conversation, that there's a creation going on with that. And I think this is also one of the reasons why Mercury, it's known as Grahapati, which Graha means like for easy translation, the planets, and Pati means Lord. So he's the Lord of the planets. Well, why is that? Why would the intellect and our communication be the Lord of all the other planets? Why would it be associated with Vishnu, who is the creator of all things? Something very important is here. When you start really thinking about this, you start applying your Mercury, a lot here is this will unlock a lot for you, put it that way. Now, I think it's interesting to kind of hit on, since we're speaking about creation, well, how's it said that Mercury came into creation? Well, for a very, very, very brief version of the story, it said that the moon, Chandra, had become very lustful over Tara, who was the wife of Grahapati, who's Brihaspati's associated with Jupiter. So he abducts her, and then out of that union, they create Budha, Mercury. So we can see that Chandra, being the moon, he's the one that gives birth to Mercury. Or not the one that gives birth, but the one that creates Mercury. Sorry, fathers Mercury. We can see that Mercury is born from the mind. That our intellect is born from the mind. Our communication is born from our mind. And the mind is also the way through which we experience everything. We experience our karma. So it's a very, very integral part. So seeing that our Mercury, our intellect, and our communication are born from such an important thing, that will also show their importance and relevance of why it's important to have a good Mercury no matter what you're doing. Even if you have a Mercury that you feel like isn't the best, that's the thing about Mercury, is you can improve it. You don't have to stay that way. You can work to improve it. You can improve your speech. You can improve your ability to learn by studying harder. So Mercury's not a stagnant thing. It's a planet. It's always moving. It's very fast. It can evolve very quickly if you choose to work with it. So we can also note here that, like, astronomically speaking, Mercury is also the closest planet to the sun, which in Vedic astrology we associate with the sun with like the soul, the source. So the first Graha, the first planet, the first being to get the light of the sun, the light of the soul, is Mercury. It spends more time closer to the sun than any other planet. So think about that. Now let's look at how Mercury can also preserve. So this would be the Vishnu aspect of the Trimurti. So we're creation, we would have been looking at Brahma there. That's the Brahma aspect. This would be Vishnu. So Mercury can be used, our intellect, our communication, it can be used to preserve knowledge. So this is done through what? Like memory. Well, that's one. You're remembering something. That's Mercury. But it's also done through the act of, like, say, writing books or filming videos or any type of thing through which you're communicating some type of knowledge, some type of understanding. You're teaching, you're learning, all that type of stuff. That's all a way of being able to preserve knowledge, not only create it. Like right now, I'm creating this video, but it's being recorded. It's going to be preserved so other people can be able to utilize it and get value from it. And then we, in a minute, we'll get into how it can also destroy. It's an interesting one. How could a piece of knowledge destroy something? Well, yeah, so preservation of knowledge is done through any type of like teaching, lecturing, writing. All those things are very much associated with Mercury, but that's how knowledge is preserved. Even if it's, like I said, whether you're writing it down or in a book or you're passing it on in an oral tradition, that's Mercury. So you got that now. So now let's look at the Shiva aspect of Trimurti and how it can apply to Mercury. Well, Mercury can destroy. So much like a sword, the intellect has the ability to cut through illusions. So it has the ability to counter ignorance, to destroy ignorance. It has the ability to recognize patterns, and then work with those. So all of that requires a bit of a process of destruction. Even for recognizing patterns, what do you have to do? You have to break down all the pieces and look at them. It's that slicing apart of thing, which intellect to the left right literally means to pick apart from a mom. So it's this process of destruction that's there, and then reassembling that later on. That creation comes back into play. So the intellect, again, the Mercury, and our speech as well. It could be very much like a sword. You could say something that makes someone feel like they just got cut, or you just stab them in the heart, right? So that could be used in a very good way or an unhealthy way. But, both the intellect, our communication, Mercury, they have that ability to kind of be like that blade, like that sword. We can also see that our brains physiologically are doing all three of these things all the time. We can see that, like, for creation, for Brahma, we're constantly creating new neural pathways, new ways of understanding things, or new habits, those type of things. By creating those things, it's, when you're building a neural pathway, so to start a new habit, like you want to exercise every day. So then you start doing that, and that creates that habit in the brain slowly over time where it grows. And by growing and being created, it preserves your urge to want to do that and to stay committed to that action. But at the same time, you can also, what if you have a bad habit? Or you have an incorrect assumption, or something that you learned was wrong? Well, what do you have to do? You have to destroy that neural pathway so you can then create a new one and then preserve better habits. So you can see that all three of these are constantly functioning in unison within our own brain, within our entire reality. And the reason why it's so important to understand that, to apply your Mercury to it, is because by understanding what's going on in your own brain, on the microcosm, you can understand what's going on in the macrocosm. You really want to sum up, and I've said this many times, and I'll keep saying it because it's good. It's good information. That awareness creates choice. So by creating awareness, you then have the ability to exercise your free will more. So let's say, for example, like you were going to like a restaurant and you thought they only had like one type of food. So that's what you got every time. You didn't know they had a restaurant menu, but all of a sudden someone hands you a menu and you're like, you have all these other options. You have all these other choices. That awareness made you more aware of, you became more aware of the choice that you have, of the free will that's there. And free will is always inherent. It's always there. But it's our awareness of it allows us to step into the place of being able to actually exercise it. So the more awareness you have, the better you'll be able to apply your free will in your life. So therefore, you can become more and more of a creator in your life, and then therefore beyond that. That's the eventual goal, is to evolve beyond that. So awareness creates choice. Everything going on in the universe can be summed up by that. Because when you think about what is the universe wanting to do, it's wanting, Source Vishnu is wanting to learn about itself. It's wanting to experience. In order to do that, it needs to have many, many different experiences. So it needs to have many different experiencers. So this is why it creates avatars of itself. It creates fractals of itself. It manifests. And through all these different manifestations, it has all these different experiences. Well, in order to get the most out of those experiences need to be able to act individually of themselves. So that means free will is an absolute essential foundational building block of reality, of experience. And the experiencer is exerting its free will. So it's both the experiencer and the experience, Purusha and Prakti, the masculine and feminine, inherently have free will built into them. To utilize that free will to the fullest potential, we have to cultivate awareness, which is the other thing. Like I said, the universe is wanting to experience itself. It needs free will in which to do that. So they go hand in hand. So by creating awareness, you create more choice. Both of those things are Mercury, because Mercury is becoming aware of something, and then what? Looking at it, analyzing it, and then making a choice. So we start seeing why Vishnu is associated with Mercury. We start seeing why he's Grahapati, the lord of all the other planets. Mercury is so important. And if you're trying to like half-ass your Mercury, or half-assing your life, that's really what it comes down to. We can also see here that Vishnu is the preserver, because preservation requires doing all of those things. To preserve knowledge, say you're wanting to create a book, create a video, right? There's creation involved, because you have to learn, right? You have to be able to communicate, and then pass that knowledge on. So there's creation. Through that creation, there's what? The preserving of that knowledge. But how does destruction fit in there? Well, by putting out proper knowledge, what are you hoping to do? You're hoping to have the result of destroying nescience at the very least, and hopefully ignorance. Which, if you don't know the difference in those, I'll explain, because nescience is a word that's almost lost in the English language. Nescience comes from the Latin. It means ni, and then sciare. So sciare means to know, and ni means like without. So it's without knowing. So if you are nescient of something, it's because that information has never been presented to you. So if you imagine like a person that isn't like raised in like a tribe, and say like the Amazon rainforest or something, right? They're a traditional indigenous people. They're going to be nescient of how to operate a computer. No, they've never had the opportunity to learn that. Now that's very different than, say, someone who was born in like the modern West, and they're just like, I hate technology, I don't want to learn how to do that. That's ignorance. It's an act of willfully and actively ignoring the information. So there's a difference between the two. One's a forgivable thing. The other one, not, to some extent, not so much so. So that's the goal when we're, trying to pass on this information. It's not only to create the opportunity for more people to come into more awareness, and to also continue to spread that information, but in the process of that creation, there is also a destruction, like I said, of at least nescience and hopefully ignorance as well. So all three of those are going on. So to actually preserve, to be the preserver, to keep the whole experience going, in reality, create everything going, you have to have both the forces of creation and destruction. Why? And this is why they're all kind of part of the same being. If you think of Vishnu as like the whole body, you can think of Shiva and Brahma as the hands. You need your hands to do different things. They're different parts of you. They're separate from each other, but they're still part of you. That's kind of how you could think of the Trimurti. So if it's kind of hard at first for people coming from a Western background to sometimes grasp that, but once you grasp that, everything else will start to open up for you and unravel. So one last little point that I wanted to speak about on Mercury, and this isn't so much related to Vedic astrology itself, but it still demonstrates the point, is that when you look within the the tradition of alchemy, you can see that Mercury, or we'll start off by this. The goal of alchemy is to turn lead, base consciousness, into gold, purified consciousness. One of the most important elements for doing that is mercury, Quicksilver. Quicksilver, think about that name. But what mercury does, and this actually applies in actual like gold mining and everything. If you take the gold and you have like the raw material and there's other impurities in there, what you do is you use mercury, and it can actually, and this isn't good for the environment, but it works. This is why symbolically it had such an important meaning in alchemy as well. But you take mercury and it will actually separate out the impurities and solidify the gold particles together. So it does what? It separates things. That's why it's called mercury. That's why that material was named mercury, because it separates things. It does the same thing. It purifies them. It can help you take the lead and turn it into gold. So, and if you're thinking about an alchemical process, which is a process of self-realization and understanding, the whole thing is about learning to understand yourself, questioning things. Like it's all mercury. So this is why Quicksilver is what it actually helps. Mercury is what actually helps purify the consciousness to turn it into gold. There's also a lot of similarities with Odin, and I won't get into that right now, but if you look at the archetype of Odin and within the Norse tradition, he's also associated with Mercury. So you can see many more lessons coming from that. But again, it's just these repeating themes. So I kind of want to just get that basis out there, that Mercury is both the creator, the preserver, and the destroyer. It's Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Think about that and just the importance of Mercury. And so when you start considering things, you see the importance of why it's so important to think critically, why it's important to use your speech properly, all of these different things. And as you start to master those things, you'll start to be able to not only master your life, but the rest of reality as well. So that's going to sum this video up today. Please like, subscribe, let me know in the comments, your experience with Mercury, or where is Mercury in your chart? What's your experience been like with that? Have you had a very good experience with these type of things, or has this been an area that's maybe been more of a struggle for you? If anyone's interested in any of my services or anything, you can shoot me an email at eyeofthestormastrology@gmail.com, or you can check out my website, eyeofthestormastrology.com. That's going to be for consultations, astrology courses, anything like that I offer. You can also, let's see, if you're viewing this on YouTube, you can also find it on my channel on the One Great Work Network, or as well on Odyssey if you want to get off the big tech platforms and go to more alternative platforms. I'm available on those as well. So those are the main places to find all of this if you want to look for an alternative, if you happen to be the person viewing this on YouTube. So thank you for tuning in, guys. I hope this was valuable for you, and I will see you again next time.